morning we've been talking about the principle of certainty, and that principle is derived from the principle of unicity, oneness with the Creator. When we're one with the Creator, it's almost impossible to understand the principle of certainty unless we understand who we are and our relationship with the Creator, with our Creator. And because then the question comes in, how can you not be certain of one thing, but certain of the unicity with the Creator, that we are one, connected with the Creator? So let's see what additional questions there are, if there are any, about what we've been talking about.
Good morning. This is Ron. Yeah, we got off the phone Monday night, and I felt good about the discussion. And Pastor talked about speaking to the universe and about certainty. And then I guess in the middle of the week, just looking at things, I got to overanalyzing things, I suppose. And, you know, I have to admit that certainty and without doubt kind of creeped in my thinking a little bit. And I got to thinking how, you know, to pull that together, put it back together and see it. And I think you just explained it. The truth that we look at in everyday life, whether or not, does somebody please mute your phone? The truth that we look at on the weekends is the same truth that we speak about during the week. And it may not come out of the book, but it's the same. For example, we want to see men understand who they are so that they understand their relationship with the Creator and with our relationships with each other. And the address a lot of it, the gun violence that we see. So the same truth that you talk about on the weekend, the certainty and the oneness, creates that desire for seeing clearly what to say to the universe and how to say it. And it's nothing magical. It's just a sincere desire. So I look at that and I thought, you know, don't let this trip you up. Don't let it be something so, you know, so big that you can't see it. The oneness of with being, you know, with Elohim is like trying to study the Hebrew alphabet, and the first letter Aleph means oneness. It means being one with the Creator. It cannot be divided. So that has no negative side to it. There is no, you know, other thing you could say about that. So that is the same way we are when we study the scriptures. The certainty that when we look at the unicity of being one with the universe and being one with the Creator, as Barbara stated the last couple of lessons, or whether or not we're talking about the Ten Commandments or the Lord's Prayer or Kathy doing Revelation or whatever it is, we speak with a certainty because we know it's true. And that same truth is the word that we speak or that I saw when in the middle of the week, kind of tripping over myself and just letting it be. Hey, the truth is the truth. Just roll with it. It's the same words that you speak on the weekends. It's the same desire. It's the same heart. It's the same love. So the oneness is there. It's not something that you got to worry about how to say this in the right way. So that's just a thought I had. I'm done.
Thanks, Ron. Your point to us though is that when we talk about this stuff on the weekend, it has to be a lived thing, which means that it doesn't have. We have to live it all as we go along during our common everyday experiences. If we don't live it in that means, in that way, then how can we hope to continue on in understanding the principle when a bigger obstacle comes in our path or stress comes in our path? It's got to be part of our everyday living, this belief that I'm one. And when we do that, and when we screen everything we say to others, understanding that principle on our jobs, in our homes, just everyday living, it's so much easier when the illusion of something really big confronts us, and then we don't fly off into all the different corners pulling our hair saying, what do we do, what do we do, what do we do? Because we've been living this, and we've been breathing this certainty, if that resonates.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ron, I'm sorry.
No, I'm disagreeing with her. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to just say that, again, in terms of the principles of certainty and just being able to listen to everyone's spirit. Last week when you spoke about Romans 8:35, it was just a reassurance and a certainty for me to realize that nothing can separate us from the love of Yahweh. Nothing can separate us in terms of the Elohim that we are. And so in that oneness, as you say, is not just on the Friday, not just on Saturday, Sunday, or Monday, but just living the experience. And I, believe that some of us, are experiencing that. I think all of us can experience it. It's just a matter, again, of just constant, meditation, constant prayer, and just being constantly consistent, and just knowing that nothing can separate us. Nothing can separate that one. So it's just reassuring.
Would you mute your phone, please?
It would be reassuring.
George, would you hold a second? Would you mute your phones, please? Thank you. Go ahead, George.
Yeah, so that's a reassuring factor for me. And just to hear in your words, Barbara, as you say, everything's going to be all right. So it's all good. It's all right. I'm done.
Thank you, George. Everything is for our benefit. Everything is for our benefit, regardless of how we see it, how we perceive it. Everything is for our benefit, for our growth, for our understanding who we are, and for further cementing this truth of who we are. I was looking at Exodus 14:19, when the Egyptians had, when the Israelites had left Egypt, and it talked about this pillar of fire that went before them at night, and this cloud by day. But if you look at verse 19, it says, the angel of God, which went before the camp of Israel, removed and went behind them. And the pillar of the cloud went from before their face and stood behind them. And it came between the camp of the Egyptians and camp of Israel. And here's the kicker. It was a cloud and darkness to them, the Egyptians. But it gave light by night to these, the Israelites, so that the one came not near the other all night. In other words, what the Israelites were seeing and what the Egyptians were seeing of the same entity was different to each one of them. And so when we maintain our certainty, even though things seem dark, when we understand that we are one with the Creator, the light always shines through. No matter how dark the issue is, or how dark the night seems, or how dark the circumstance seems, when we maintain that oneness, that's when the light continues to shine through for us. So it's one of those things that I glean from this principle of certainty. I'm certain that no matter how dark it is, as George says, it's going to be all right, because everything is for my benefit. Everything is for my benefit. Other questions, comments?
So when we see things as being chaotic, the Egyptians represent our physical eyes, our physical sight. And what Israel was experiencing, what the Hebrews were experiencing, was seeing with the eye, or having an experience of the continuous light in spite of the what was perceived to be a danger chasing them. Having said that, then I think what we may be, based on what Ron said, may be dealing with is, when we look at the scriptures and we talk about them every weekend, yes, we do look at them with a certainty because it is the truth and we believe what we see. However, that same certainty is difficult to apply during the course of the week. And the question is why? Why is it so difficult? The difficulty with applying certainty during the course of the week is because we have been conditioned to separate what we see in the scriptures from our everyday lives. Ron made a statement that it may be in the book, it may not, and that in itself is what we have been conditioned to see or to believe. If it's not saying exactly what the scriptures is saying, then we don't perceive it as being in the quote unquote book. We see it as being just life, and we see it as being secular. And the only thing that is actually secular are those things that we see with our eyes. Everything that we see with our eye is divine. And the lives that we live during the course of the week are no different. They are divine. We are the ones who determine that they are not. And when we are able to embrace the divinity of our lives, whether it is the weekend or whether it is during the course of the week, it is at that point that we truly become one with the universe. The concept of separateness only exists with our eyes, never with the eye. So when we see it that way, it is at that point that we begin to make immediate changes, not in so much our lives as much as in the lives of humanity itself, or we transform. We begin the process of transforming the barbaric mindset into that of the human in a divine way. Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. It does.
So that making sense, then when we talk about everyday life, I think that it may very well be time for us to transition into the specifics of the chaos that we are constantly facing. And I'm not talking about the chaos on a job or the chaos in your household or the chaos in your neighborhood. That is an offshoot of the chaos of this entity that seeks to be human. The uptick in the violence in the African community in particular is a burden for me. It's been heavy on me, but I've not known how to address it. And I'm hoping that I'm approaching it in a righteous manner. Now, this uptick in the violence in the African community cannot be denied. It's there. And I'm wondering if this uptick is due to the reality of us beginning to see with the clarity who we are and our purpose of being in the earth. And it is becoming rather a distraction to our journey. And what I mean by that is this: the distraction being, my God, where's all this coming from? It seems like things are getting worse. That's the distraction. It is my contention that this uptick is a reflection of what is actually the most prevalent thing in the society. If the African is to be the mirror, and I'm not talking simply skin colors and I'm talking concepts. If the African is to be the mirror, then the African also mirrors what's in society. The increase in the violent nature of the white supremacists has been met with an increase in the violence of the African, but it's towards the African. So that is reflective of the desire of the white supremacists to be destructive to the African. And I do believe that when we see this for what it really is, and we begin to approach it with a certainty, without any doubt whatsoever, that is not what we are supposed to reflect. That is the thing that we are supposed to redeem. And when we do that and begin to live a life of redemption in our everyday life, and I use that term loosely, in our everyday life, whether it be on a job or in a grocery store, when we begin to live a life of redemption, it is then that we begin to change the image in the mirror that's being shown to humanity. And that change comes because of our desire to do that. And I do believe that the universe is indeed speaking to us about the change in the reflection in this mirror. And I do believe also that when we acknowledge what the universe is saying to us and embrace what is being said to us, it is not a programmatic thing of how to get it done. It is a belief that it is done, and at that point, we began to see the desired change. We began to see a peace that will begin to that we will begin to see in the communities, because right now it appears as though we are on a course of self-destruction, but it is not self-destruction. It is simply, again, a reflection of what's in the minds and hearts of the rulership in this nation, and our obligation is to alter the course of that. Questions or comments, or am I making sense?
Sage, this is Vermel. I have a question. I understood you to say that the violence we're seeing in our African American communities, the uptake, is a reflection of our government, our politics. Can you explain that a little bit more?
It's a reflection of the mindset of those who are in charge. I remember a few months ago, I believe it was Audrey who alluded to the idea that this uptick, this violence, is actually the African trying to take on an attitude or a character that it is not. It is taking on concepts that does not belong to it. It is mimicking the power structure of the Caucasian. And I'm saying, that's what I am saying, that the power structure that controls and manipulates this world is in the under the authority of the Caucasian, and it's very, very violent, and that's what it's reflective of. Does that make sense to you, Vermel?
Yes, very much. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Sage, can I ask another question?
Sure.
So, the behavior that I talked to you yesterday about with my son, can I look at that as being a reflection of that too?
That is exactly it.
Thank you.
When we think about what we're talking about a concept of violence, a concept of destruction, a concept that does not value life. And there are all kinds of ways to devalue life. We think sometimes that devalue life looks like someone being shot. No, when you remove jobs from communities, when you remove grocery stores from communities, when you make sure you put into place policies and principles and laws that forces people to live under subhuman conditions, you are devaluing life. When you encourage people not to be vaccinated, you are devaluing life. When you encourage people to gather in groups in places where you know there could very well be a adverse adverse effects of this virus in their group, that's devaluing life. One of the things that is happening is, I believe it was either QAnon or Proud Boys who talked about duplicated COVID vaccination cards and selling them to people who have not been vaccinated. Well, that's underway. That's a devaluation of life, and anything that devalues life does not have its origin in the concept of the African, because why would the African be the one who devalues life when life came from the womb of the African? It is taking on the image that is foreign to the African concept. Any questions about that?
I don't have a question about that, but I want to address something you said. Were you finished with that, Pastor? You were going somewhere.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
One thing I remember during the week, what kind of started me on my, for lack of a better term, kind of spiral out of seeing who I am, kind of losing focus. This woman on television was talking about, I think the bill was about to expire, where people being evicted, and this woman, single mother with a kid. I think her said son was 6 years old, or is 6 years old, and the landlord's been trying to put her out and trying to get her to leave. So what does he do? He cuts off her hot water, so she was saying that they're having to bathe in cold water, and I thought how heartless that was, and that took me somewhere. I probably, as we know and as I know better, I probably kind of choose to let it take me there, because I got a little angry about that. But that was just a spark that I needed to kind of take me out of bounds a little bit. But it goes back when you said something about being the mirror. It just kind of showed me something. This is not external, and I have to keep reminding myself of that, meaning that the chaos and the darkness in me does not look like the violence that I see. So it's easy for me to not grasp it or understand it from that perspective, but it's the same energy. So the chaos that's in me is what I need to focus on, because it's there, and you may not see it, but I know it's there. And my focusing on that, and with the certainty, as Barbara said, the oneness, and using that as a catalyst for more enlightenment, so that I see the light side of the cloud and not the darkness. Just kind of spoke to me when you were talking, Pastor, about the mirror, and relating that to Exodus 14. So I don't want to lose focus of that, and I just thought that part needs to be included in our conversation. It becomes difficult sometimes if we don't see the darkness in us, that maybe that's the whole answer, not part of it, but the whole answer is to deal with the darkness that's in us individually, and maybe that is the enlightenment that others will see that changes things. I'm done.
I can see. Go ahead.
No, I'm done. It's for now.
I can see that, and I think my focal point in speaking in regards to a certainty is more related to us being continuously purging ourselves of these religious beliefs that are so deeply embedded until we follow them without thinking about it. For example, if we stood in front of a congregation, or if we were to do it on these phones consistently, and talk about how the society is set to keep people in a subservient position and to enhance the wealth of others. And if we were to continue to talk about how prevalent racism is in this country, in this world, there will be those who would say we're not talking about the scriptures. Even when we're talking about the violence in the community, there are those who talk about we're not talking about the scriptures. Even when we were talking about the devaluation of life, yet when Jesus says that, when I was hungry, you fed me not. When I was in prison, you visited me not. Was Jesus not speaking the words of our Creator when he said that? Was he off base because he was dealing with the everyday problems that people had to face, the everyday Roman principles that devalued life? Was he not? Was he not speaking the will of the Father then? It is my belief that it is crazy for us to think that we have to quote scripture word for word verbatim in order for us to be speaking about righteousness. To be quite frank with you, the most unrighteous thing you can do is quote scripture, especially when you don't know what it means, especially when it's being used to enhance you and not humanity, especially when it's being used to impress someone. To me, that is one of the worst things that you can do, and it has no basis in spiritual reality at all. It is an abandonment of the obligation that we say has been given to us to bring righteousness into this earth. So I suggest very strongly that we begin to not only look at those things in Scripture, but also to look at those things in our face, in this society that we live in. We talked about the brutality of what happened with the young lady a few weeks ago, and the torture of that young man. We talked about those things, and we quickly related them to the scriptures by virtue of bringing in a chapter or a verse of scripture to relate to that. However, I do not believe that is necessary, but I do believe that it is necessary to address the issues and to listen at the universe as opposed to recalling the methods of teaching that we have been indoctrinated with in our religious settings. I do believe that until there is a genuine free flow of discussion about about how to address the woes of our society from a purely spiritual perspective, until we do that, certainty will not become a constant companion with us. Until we get to the place where we truly believe that when we speak of righteousness and peace and harmony, regardless of how we speak of it, when those are our desires, we are indeed right in Scripture. We are speaking as righteously as did Jesus, even though we're not quoting the words that he spoke or the words that were written that they say he spoke. The words that are there are not as important as the principles that they represent. Therefore, as long as the principles of discussion are righteous, as long as the principles of discussion are geared toward bringing peace and harmony to this earth realm, so that this beast can become human, as long as those things are true, it doesn't matter whether you say Jesus wept or not. It doesn't matter whether you say Our Father which art in heaven. It doesn't matter whether you say that or whether you say the universe is speaking to me and I to it. It doesn't matter. What matters is our motive. What matters is the desire to bring this harmony and this righteousness to the earth. Any questions or comments about that, or do you think I'm off base? Anyone?
This is Barbara. I understand what you're saying. We don't touch people unless we are able to touch where they live and how they live. And that's on on a day-to-day, everyday experience kind of thing. When we talk about things out there, even though we may understand it and they don't understand it, we connect with them where they are. And when their circumstances and their lives are changed on a day-to-day basis, meaning we have to continue to put in the macro exactly what you just said, because that was the Exodus principle I was talking about in Exodus 14. We have to understand that the adversary, the adverse thoughts that we have, want us to continue to see things, the dark side of things. And we understand that's not who we really are. And that's what we have to speak to the macro. We have to put in the macro. That's not who we really are. And that macro is even putting, as you say, the everyday, day-to-day things, because that's where we are. This is the plane we're in, and that's how we influence people in this physical plane, by dealing with what the dark side, the darkness that we are dealing with and that they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you, Barbara. Anyone else?
I just want to speak to your mentioning sincere desire. I mean, our sincere desire has led us to where we are in this journey so far. It is what has opened truth up to us, and given us the discipline and the patience needed to unravel and understand things and pull things together and understand what prayer is and moving in that direction. I mean, we are an example in the earth of what sincere desire can do, and that is that is part of the truth, because that's not something you can hide. You cannot hide that from the universe. So I just want to add that into what you and Barbara said.
When we talk about speaking to the universe, what does that look like to you? What does that feel like? What does that sound like when we talk about speaking to the universe?
It looks like, it feels like, it sounds like speaking to myself. And reminding myself who I am, because I am the universe and it is me.
Think about it. It feels like, it sounds like speaking to myself. That speaks of an embracement of duality. If I am speaking to myself, then if I am the universe and the universe is me, then it is the self who has not truly embraced who it is or the unicity of its existence. When we speak to self, is it not the universal soul speaking to the individual mind, seeking to bring that mind into a oneness with the soul, so that at some point there is no longer a reason to speak to self, because self does not exist separately from the energy of the soul. And that is the reason Jesus was able to speak with a certainty that he and the Father are one. He never said that I speak what I think. He never said I speak to myself. He said, I say what I see my Father say, or what I perceive from the Father is what I speak to you. It's not I have to talk myself into anything. He did not say, do I really want to go to the cross? He says, Father, if it's your will. What am I saying? The one who is speaking to self is always the collective soul. And when we are in a space where we are certain as to who we are and our oneness with life itself, it is at that point that this soul that occupies this space called body begins to speak the voice of the Father of the universe on a continuous basis. Why is it so difficult for us to embrace that? Because we have been told that the only way to speak to God is through prayer, and we've been told that we cannot be Elohim. All the things that we have been told have been things that discourage us from believing that we are speaking the voice of our Creator. We have been so ingrained with a sense of self until it has resulted into deep-seated selfishness, and is seated so deeply until we can be selfish without even knowing it, without even realizing it, without even recognizing it, and without those around us even knowing that we're being selfish, because all of us have been ingrained with the same thing. So at what point do we occupy the spiritual space where we are so confident in whatever we speak that it is going to take place? Then, at what point do we get to that place where we can speak to a storm in a life and that storm ceases immediately? When do we get to that space where we can speak to the idea of this concept of constant and continuous violence in the African community directed against the seed of the African. We speak to it and it ends abruptly. Why is it that we seemingly cannot do that? I believe the reason it is so difficult for us to accomplish that is because we are speaking to the violence that we see, and we are not speaking to the source of it. When we learn how to speak to the source of it, knowing that the source of it is the unrightness that is ingrained in this earth consciousness, when we learn to speak to the source of that violence, then we will begin to see not a modicum, but a major shift in the violence in our communities. But as long as we look at that young man with that gun in his hand pulling the trigger, as long as we look at that, we're not looking at the source. The source of it goes all the way back to the source of greed. Without greed, there is no violence. Without a desire to take what someone else has or what you perceive them to have, without that, there is no violence. When we look at the source of the greed and we are truthful about that source, regardless of how uncomfortable it is then that we not only embrace the concept of certainty without any doubt, but we become that concept of certainty. I cannot do that for you. Neither can you do it for me. You have to do it through your soul that occupies the space called body. And when that happens, everything in this earth realm begins to change immediately. It begins to change as quickly as the light comes on when you flip a switch. However, it cannot be done as long as we allow the doubt to find a place in us. What do I mean by that? When we speak a truth about the scriptures, we have no doubt whatsoever. We don't question whether it's true or not. We don't question whether or not we can hold on to it. We just accept it and move on. It is with that type of certainty that we have to look at the source and desire to remove or to transform the source of violence so that it can change. As a matter of truth, every concept that we have talked about, be it racism, religion, misogyny, homophobia, I don't care what it is, every poverty, everything we have talked about has its origin in greed, and this greed is perpetuated and protected by violence. So when we see that greed is the source of all of these isms that we need to transform, it is then that we can begin to truly embrace the concept of certainty. Any questions or comments about that, or do you understand what I'm saying?
Sounds like you're talking about selfishness then, because greed is based on what I want for me, when I want it, how I want it, sort of thing.
Absolutely.
But you're absolutely right. At least for me, I see the violence and I let my emotions get in the way, I don't see the source. And I see that. I see what you're saying. Uh, yeah, I let other things get in the way.
When that happens, what we're actually doing, we are placing the blame on the shoulders of an ignorant and innocent victim. When all you know is violence, all you know is greed, all you know is selfishness, and you've never known anything else, yet those who are pulling your strings are very much aware of the source of it, then those who seek to change it are only looking at the results and not looking at the manipulators or the string or those who are pulling the string and the concepts that are being used to pull the strings, then nothing changes. So I submit to us today that we begin to diligently look at the source of everything that we see, the source of enslavement, the source of rape, the source of everything is greed, is dominance, is selfishness. And when we look at that source and we see where it lives, then we can begin to extricate it from our society. And I'm not talking about the McConnells or the Donald Trumps or the Bidens. I'm not talking about that. They are simply representatives of the concept the concept of greed and dominance. And so the upheaval of the greed is something that we must focus on. I do believe. Any questions about that?
This Angela, I got a question. When you were talking about at the beginning, communicating with the universe and speaking to self. So you're saying that we have to move. Is it move beyond speaking with the universe and just hearing what the Creator's saying? Or is that what you're saying, or I don't quite understand?
No, that's not what I'm saying. The universe and the Creator are the same. The Father, when we say Father of womb, Creator, universe, all that's the same. What I'm saying is this: when we get to the place where we don't have to question what's right and what's wrong, we know what's right. When we get to the place where we don't have to debate within ourselves what we're going to do next or how we should do it, it is at that point that we are one with the universe. Jesus never debated whether or not he was going to overturn those tables in the temple. Jesus never debated whether or not he was going to repair the ear of Malchus in the garden. He never debated those things. Jesus never debated whether or not it was right for him to heal on the Sabbath or not. He never debated that. He knew that the Sabbath was made for man, man was not made for the Sabbath. So what am I saying? Jesus was very much aware of the principles of the kingdom, and he lived by them. When we are so committed to the principles of the kingdom, until we begin to live by them without regard to the circumstances that we encounter on a daily basis, it is at that point that we and the universe are in constant communication, and we don't have to be talking to self anymore. Like self, should I buy this or should I not? Should I retaliate for what happened to me or should I not? We don't have to do that. We automatically respond as opposed to reacting. And if anybody can help me make it clear, I appreciate it.
Pastor, I want to give an example of what you just said. This is Kathy. I shared with you that 2 weeks ago on a Monday evening, we were getting ready to listen to the service. It's about maybe, 5:45 or something. And a storm rolled in, a very bad storm. Earlier in the day, some little representative from our security system had been out going door to door on a hoverboard. And he was going door to door just to see how everything was working. We didn't know where he came from. We had talked with him earlier. However, when the storm rolled in, we learned later because this kid came back and rung our doorbell out of all the houses in the neighborhood and said, "May I sit on your porch during the storm?" Someone had ridden by him, but it was pouring rain. They went into their home and gave him an umbrella and left him in the storm. He came back to the house. And I said, honey, lightning can still strike you sitting on the porch, because, it was almost like frenetic activity. I ended up inviting the young man in. He told us his name. This child ate dinner with us. He was 18 years old, and stayed for 2.5 hours, and we had never laid eyes on him before that day. My mom was a little nervous because she was having those Dylan Roof thoughts that, you invite someone in and they could harm you. I never felt that, but I didn't even stop to think about that. I thought about his safety. When I was telling you about it later, because I was so blown away about it, when I was talking to Pastor about it later, he said something to me that I hadn't even thought about. He said, you never would have let him in if you had not felt it was all right to do that. I didn't stop and process, do I feel it? Do I not feel it? Is it the right thing to do? Is it not the right thing to do? I recognized that he recognized something. When you're saying we put things in the universe, out of the 20-something houses on the street, how did he know to come here where he would be safe? How did he know to come in here? How did we know to let him in so that we too would still be safe? He had been vaccinated, because that was an important question as well. But I'm saying all of this to say, when we get to a point of knowing and living the scriptures, that's entertaining strangers unawares. That's being your brother's keeper. That's all those things that we read and that we say. But when you don't stop and think about, I'm going to analyze this. Do I need to let this kid in, or do I leave him out there in the rain on a hoverboard with no protection? And they still, even though they had dropped all those kids off, they did not come back for them until the appointed time, which was like 8:00 that night. The rain stopped. I went out and breathed so that the rain would stop. I stood on the porch and just breathed, and the storm stopped. And after 2.5 hours, the kid went on to the drop-off point and was picked up. I think that's a perfect example of knowing, being one with the universe, and just living the scripture without even thinking about what do I do next. And so I just wanted to share that example, if that helps, Angela.
It does.
Linda, I think Kathy, I think you're exactly right. This is Audrey. Good morning.
Good morning.
I think when we get to a place where we know, and you just said that, it's a place of knowing, as opposed to, okay, I think, or should I do this? It's just a place of knowing, and you don't even have to think about it necessarily. You just know that this is what you need to do. So yeah, it is a place of knowing.
I agree.
And no one can get you there. That's something that happens, and you don't even know it until you look at it retrospectively. I believe that we're at that place we don't always trust it, but we're there. It's difficult to trust something that you are not accustomed to experiencing. However, if you will allow yourself to experience it regardless of how difficult it may seem, because the difficulty in it does not appear at the onset. If I may take Kathy's example, the thoughts of what may or may not happen don't come at the beginning. They come after you have taken that leap. The thoughts of that her mom had came after he was there. And the approach that was taken in terms of the conversation with him was afterwards, after he was there. And I do believe that it was purposed for such circumstances like these. Why? Because why is it that Kathy did not move to end the storm until after he was in the house? He too received something from that, just as we are right now. This sense of knowing, no one has to tell you to trust whether or not your key is going to work when you open your door, or whether or not your car is going to crank when you get in it, or whether or not you're going to breathe while you are asleep. These are things that you know. And this is the type of knowing that Kathy is referencing and Audrey was emphasizing. This is the knowing that escapes specific definition, or it escapes an explanation, because it cannot be defined, neither can it be explained. Why? Because it is life itself. It is divine life. Trust the divinity that you are, and you will begin to have these types of experiences. Questions or comments?
So,
Pastor Matt, may I add? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Barbara.
I just wanted to make a comment, Kathy, that it's similar to what we've talked about. Trust what you be, not what you see.
Mm-hmm.
Trusting
Absolutely.
what you be, the Elohim that you be. You don't have to. The seeing part is putting constraints around it. Should I? Should not? Blah 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 blah. The seeing part is making judgments about it. But the trusting what you be is just being, acting based on what you are, and that's the knowing part of it.
And I agree wholeheartedly. And the only thing I was going to add was stopping the storm. That did not even resonate in me until after the young man had been here 2.5 hours. Going into the third hour, I just went out and breathed, because the whole time inside of me, it hurt me that they would drop these kids off with no car, no transportation. His car was in Greenville, South Carolina. He was in Spartanburg with a hoverboard, and I knew at some point he had to go back into the storm to the pickup location and be just picked up, and without a car. He wasn't going to drive to a location. And that's when it came to me, go stop the storm. And I went out and stopped the storm, and when he checked this, he was looking at the radar on his phone the whole time. And the bands were heavy bands moving through. And then he said, oh, it looks like everything is clearing up. I thank you all so much. God bless you. I appreciate you all taking me in. And then he left. And so even in that instance, and I didn't even think about that until Pastor was saying stopping the storm, he was supposed to be here for that amount of time before it came to me, go out there and stop the storm, not for my benefit because, okay, let's get him out of here. Not only was it time for him to go, but for his benefit, so that he wouldn't have to go out into still tornadic-looking activities to get back to a drop-off point, which was outside too. And I just wanted to share that too.
Kathy,
Again.
can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Did you mention God while he was there?
He did. He said, I said, I've got Monday night Bible study starting at 6. Do you want me to go in another room? He said, you're Christians. It was like, I knew you were Christians. He had only had maybe a 10-minute conversation with Linda about the security system several hours earlier when he came to the door. And he listened to the Monday night class for a while. He started talking during the class, and I didn't get to hear the rest of the class. But he wanted to talk about the scripture, so absolutely. And it was a Monday night, so he listened to the class because we have it on audio on speaker. So he sat in the kitchen at the bar where we were sitting with the family and listened to the class.
The reason I ask is because I think to a certain degree, he also had a certain knowing of who you were. So, and it sounds
I
like
agree,
you just said that too.
Yeah.
And that was the only way he knew how to identify it.
Yeah.
I knew you were Christian.
Right.
Well, Pastor and everybody, on the subject of Kathy sharing, the Bible said the Spirit itself bears witness with our spirit that we are the children of God. And when we spoke about the know, Hebrew, I think it's Yada, and in there it talks about certainty. So as we've been discussing the principles of certainty, I think that this is again just an experiential moment, where we're able to bear witness in terms of just not just talking about it, but experiencing it. So I think that it's just awesome that we can just see how all things work together for the good, when we are able to look at it from a spiritual perspective and not look at it in terms of the physical form, but just being able to have the Spirit does what the Spirit do. So I just wanted to share that thought. I'm done.
Yeah, I see a lot of our lessons in that example, where we were talking about returning to beginning, and Pastor said we never left beginning. That brought some clarity to that. When you think about returning to beginning, you think about prayer and meditation, and we're already there. You don't have to prepare. You don't have to do anything. And what Kathy is describing is there was nothing to prepare. There was nothing to meditate on. It was there. She recognized it and acted upon it, and also talk about the continuum that is wisdom and understanding. What we're gaining now and what we're doing on these lessons that we do is the wisdom is being spoken out and put into understanding, and that is where the experiences is coming in. So she acted on her understanding. She put it into words, into action, and that is the experience. And not only experience for her, but experience for the young man, and it's now experience for all of us. So it just kind of open things up, everything we've been talking about. Great example.
That's living from your soul and not your mind. And we have interludes with that. The objective is to have it to be a constant, not just interludes,
Yes.
Any other questions or comments in regards to this? Or anything for that matter? Angela, is this clear with you, dear? Since you initiated a good portion of the conversation.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else?
This is Rania. I have a different direction, totally from what we've been talking about, to ask about. I was talking to one of my cousins last night, and I was getting out of the car to go and get some milk, and I forgot to get my mask because they're required inside right now. And I was like, ooh, and I got to go back and get my mask. I can't forget that. And the comment they made was, you're living in fear. And I'm sorry, my oldest is pretending he needs help over here. But my question is, you know, there are some folks who say spiritually there's this issue of fear around vaccines or masks. And I can't see that. I guess I'm trying to keep, and I didn't talk that with them at the time. We were talking about something else, so I let that slide. But I'm wondering how much of that's motivating. You know, we talk about some of the younger folks who are like, I'm not getting a vaccine, I'm not getting a mask. And it's not, I'm a Republican, or I'm Trump, or I'm whatever. It's this, you know, this idea that to do so would be a fearful thing, to be living in fear. And I guess I just wanted to ask what y'all thought of that comment and kind of that mindset, because I don't quite see it. So I'm trying to understand maybe if I'm missing something, you know.
I don't see it either. I don't see it living in fear. Let's really look at this thing. Where did that come from? It came from the charismatic church. Prior to the charismatic church, this whole concept of living in fear was approached totally different. The charismatic church teaches that anything that you don't trust God with, you're living in fear. First of all, the charismatic church is no different than any other religious sector. The belief systems are not based upon what the scriptures say. The systems are based upon what theologues say. It's based upon, bottom line, the Caucasians has interpreted the scripture to be what they want it to be. And God does whatever they tell God to do. And God is whoever they say God is. And this whole concept of living in fear is no different than something, it's antithetical to something that Jesus said. Thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. When he was spoken to him about his thoughts were to cast himself from the highest pinnacle, from the mountaintop rather. These things are crazy, and I mean crazy, insane crazy. And the reason I say that is because to challenge this virus without a mask is like walking into a dark room that you're not familiar with, trying to attack someone who's very familiar with it and they have night goggles. The person who made that statement has no understanding of the scriptures. God has not given you a spirit of fear, but one of sober-mindedness is where they're coming from. Fear, what does that mean? We were not born to fear anything. We were not created to fear anything, meaning that we are not to be afraid to do the righteous thing. Has nothing to do with not being afraid of a virus has nothing to do with that at all. It has everything to do with not being afraid of the truth, not being afraid of to stand on the principles of righteousness. These principles that are being taught in those settings, I'm very familiar with, because at one time I taught them, and I'm very thankful that I'm in a position now to understand better and to move away from that. I think that you did the right thing by not addressing it, because it would have probably devolved into argument or discussion that you would not want to have. So anyway, that's my take on it. Anyone else?
I do want to add, Pastor, you mentioned that in environments, and I've seen on Facebook too at times talk about how getting the vaccine is the start of the mark of the beast, and control, that that idea of controlling me and tracking me, and it's like, wow. I mean, I remember, like you said, being at a point where I might have bought into that, because I was always looking for the mark of the beast. I was always looking for that stuff to come up, and this, requiring a vaccine passport feels like that. Although another friend of mine put that vaccination card we used to have as kids up and said, "This was your vaccination passport when you were kids. It's okay," But that seed of that,
And your driver's license is your passport to drive a car. So it's ridiculous, is my point. Honestly, the warped concepts that are being presented in regards to this vaccine allows us to see with a greater clarity how warped the thoughts of religion is, how far off base they are. To take the scriptures and to manipulate them to fit whatever circumstance they deem it should fit, as opposed to being for the benefit of humanity. This virus has exposed America in particular and the world in general for what it really is. And it has literally shown that the emperor of religion has no clothes. It has shown the nakedness of religion. It has shown how empty it is, how devoid of power and understanding it is, how it has devised its own methods that it calls wisdom, and none of them are for the benefit of humanity. So right now, we are at a place where, well, let me back up. If this thing were not real, if it were simply for the tracking of humans, then that means that everybody in the world is going to be tracked. I do not believe that we are going to see any relief to this virus until we see relief for humanity based upon the policies of this society. I do not believe that we have seen the last variant unless we've seen the last policy that's designed to dehumanize. I do believe that the advancement, the virulence of this virus is inextricably tied to the idea of unrighteousness. And when righteousness begins to prevail, I do believe that we will begin to see a mitigation of this virus. Questions, comments?
To add kind of to what you were saying there, Pastor, I was talking to a friend yesterday, and we were talking about, just what was going on, and my thoughts, just in the physical realm in business. We were talking about how there's a shortage of parts, and people are getting mad. She works for Apple. When people get mad, they can't get their iPad or their this because there's a shortage of chips and parts, and I'm seeing that in my company too. And we look at these first world countries, or countries like the U.S., where we're saying, get everybody vaccinated quickly. We got to get them all vaccinated. And we're focused on that. But the folks who provide the parts for all, our stuff, who are mining in the mines to get the raw materials, they're in these countries where less than 1% has been vaccinated. And it amazes me when we Americans think we can get back to normal when we're all vaccinated here in America without thought to anybody else. Not realizing that unless the world's healed, we'll never get back there. Like America could get vaccinated, but then we can't get anything, all those raw materials and parts, because all the people who are part of that world system are not being cared for. So I could see that too, what you said, just in the physical, the logistics of it are such that, it's not going to change until we take care of everyone, not just one country.
And it's not an endemic virus, it's a pandemic. And that in itself is a great thing. That is the best thing for it to be. If it did not involve us, no one would care. This is an opportunity to see righteousness prevail. And however it happens, so be it. And that's exactly what I was talking about with the righteousness and harmony for the whole of mankind. Anyone else?
Yeah, with what Rainey has brought up, and Ms. Barbara was talking about the past few weeks, or at least when she mentioned duality. I see all of that in this conversation, even in terms of the traditional religious approach to approaching things from the mindset of fear, and looking at it as we consider this virus. The entire approach has always been the virus is more so the enemy. Remember when it first came out, there was things said about it like we're going to war with the virus, the enemy this, the enemy that, and then so it was turned into this thing that had to be overcome and brought under control. And it was more so that duality that I still see what Rainey was talking about in terms of more so the developing nations' attitude towards the developed nations' attitude towards developing nations in terms of like these chips or whatever, having no concern about those people being vaccinated, anything like that. It's just more so like as long as we have us, my small group of people, me, then I am okay. And I'm mentioning all of that because it is the exact, disconnect we were talking about, or we have been talking about earlier today, with the more so being grounded, being one with the universe, being confident, being certain, etc. There's that disconnect, and I think in every approach to the vaccine thus far has been to try to control it or look at it as an enemy, and not thinking of everyone involved or not being one with nature, etc. From a indigenous standpoint, when these particular things would happen and the people would understand that they were part of the whole, the part of everything, it was more so of a rebalancing, and even rebalancing things in themselves to change these things, but not actually attacking it and going to war with it. It was more so like, this thing is connected to me somehow, and then also having a respect for it, so to speak. Not sure if I describe that, but that's what I see in all of this in terms of what we've been talking about. I'm finished.
Okay, thank you, sir. Anyone else? Now, can you are you able to see with a greater clarity what we mean when we talk about the barbaric mind being transformed into that of a human? The barbaric our actions being transformed so that everyone in the earth can benefit, unlike what it was prior to, as Rainier stated, people mining the materials so that we can have the products that we want at their extent. And now all of a sudden we began to see that without balance, there is no real existence, and there is no real life. There's only existence in this earth. And the rebalancing of that does come with hardship, and it does come with casualties. Yet the results of it is reflective of what we were created to be about from the beginning. So we are still indeed at the beginning, still in the process of creating. And the materials with which we create are those materials that need to be transformed. We take the concept of greed and we transform it. And through that transformation, we create a society that is beneficial to all humans in the society, a society where the barbarian is not dominant anymore, a society where the divine is respected, a society where divinity is seen not in some faraway place, but right in front of us, be it in the flight of the bird or in the uplifting of our fellow man. The divinity is always present. Our purpose is to uncover it so that others can see it and experience it as well. So, any questions or comments? If there are no questions and no comments, then I solicit you to listen to the universe, and we will see what you've heard on tomorrow. Because I want you to, when I say listen to the universe, I'm not talking about listen because it doesn't always speak. I'm talking about listen because it's always speaking and hearing, and our response will be shared tomorrow at 11 o'clock. Are we good?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, thanks,
Have
everybody.
a great day, family.
Talk to you tomorrow.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.